Let's face it, triathlon is an expensive sport. You spend 10 grand on a bike, thousands on equipment, a coach, and race entries. Let's try and save you some money and try separate the marketing hype from the essentials for performance and to get faster. My name's Andy. Thanks for tuning in. I've been a coach for 15 to 20 years and competing at the same time. I've spent money on lots of kit over the years, some good, some bad, some just because I got sucked into it. So my goal with this video is to try and share some of my experience, fairly up-to-date products that are out there that potentially are just a marketing hype, a time waster and a money waster for you, and you're lining the big companies with some nice profits. Stick around because you might not realize there's some essential kits that you're missing that could save you ka-ching, some money, and also make you slightly faster. All right, so thanks for subscribing if you have already. I really appreciate it. The channel's growing nicely. We're in May 2025 now, hitting the Northern Hemisphere summer season soon. So the races have kicked off, and certainly 70.3s and Ironmans alike. So it's not a time to do big changes with kit, but it's also really good to refine some of the things, the low-hanging fruit I like to talk about. So let's dive straight into it. If you're on any sort of channels of social media and the triathlon forums, you would have come across AG1, Athletics Greens, One Scoop Wonder powder for your morning drink. Now, what they've done here, I almost got sucked into it, is big marketing budget, sponsored some high-level tier pros, which obviously gets the product out there. It's a typical model. And 100% yes, I'm not dissing the product as in it's terrible, but it's around 80 pounds or $100 a month if you take it properly. And you think, wow, that's replacing all my pills. What they've done, they've used a lot of plant formula, added prebiotics, probiotics as well, lots of fiber, multivitamins, and created a very nice all-in-one powder, which I'm sure has great benefits for everyone if you took nothing. So what you're paying for there is a really hyped up product with small amounts. So if you really get down to the nitty-gritty, because I looked at this because I was going to get involved with it because I was taking my general multivits, and I still do, and you never quite know if it's bioavailable. So is the body actually making use of those vitamins and minerals in the state as close to your body can recognize? Because we know from research and science, cheaper formulas just don't get absorbed into the bloodstream and the gut. So you're actually just throwing your money down the drain. They mentioned 2 strains of probiotics. It's very small, the percentage you're getting in that powder. You better off actually just having some natural products, a bit like kefir, that dairy drink, fermented dairy, your cheeses. Again, moderation is key. I know you're thinking, well, it's all these different things and one has to be in the fridge. But if you just want to burn a lot of money each month and pay for their marketing budget and the professionals, then by all means crack on. I think it's overhyped for what you get, the actual breakdown and how much the vitamin D, all the minerals and the magnesium. Athletes need high levels of traditionally zinc, magnesium, vitamin B, especially if you're vegetarian listening to this, or vegan. Your B vitamins need really boosting. You're just not going to get enough. I can guarantee that if you look at all the ingredients and the percentage and the milligrams. What you ideally want is something that covers a generalized base, and I'll touch into that in the must-haves. Okay, so that's the first thing that I think, and sorry if you're part of Athletics Greens and you're listening to that, I think it is a great product and no one else is really doing as intense ingredients as that in one, but you definitely can get a better amount from doing things slightly differently individually. Well, the second, should I say, money waster is a hypoxic training altitude tent. Okay, so firstly, I'm not saying it doesn't work. Of course it works, hypoxic altitude training chambers. There's a reason for it. What age groupers tend to do is get one that, I'm talking about the ones that fit over your bed, and you try sleep high and train low, that effect, which has been around for years, and professionals do that where they They sleep at altitude and train in the valley, where it's easy on the body and so forth. So the idea is to make the air thinner at night. The problem comes in, you have to actually spend a huge amount of time to get a 1 to 2% gain. And I'll include a little scientific paper around this study, around this research of hypoxic altitude tents. Now, that's great if you're single, and that's great if you don't want to compromise your partnership and let alone your sex life. But it's actually not very well sealed as well. And it's also not as effective as you might think. I have actually used one back in 2016 from memory. I was going to Boulder in Colorado, and it is at 1600, I think, meters. So I had no option. I live at sea level. I thought I'd give it a go, slept in it maybe 2 weeks. Whether I felt a difference, I can't tell you. I went 2 weeks before to the event, and yes, it was very hard breathing up until kind of the race day, and you just have to slow down and go on RPE and heart rate, and the air's thinner, so you do move faster on the bike. The amount of time you have to spend in the tent, what actually is the problem, and I was telling this to one of my athletes I coaches, is if it affects your sleep. Now, we all know how important sleep is because there's endless documentation and reviews around this. If it's disrupting your circadian rhythms, your ability to drop off, waking up in the night because the air is thin, and also the claustrophobia, the heat, depending where you live and what time of the year it is, if it's affecting anything of your quality of sleep, then I would definitely consider not using it. So I think it's a really nice to have for the small percentages for the elites and professional athletes going to the Olympics, but just to interject that into your life and do the odd night here and there. You have to do weeks and weeks and weeks in a row to get the stimulus, and you can lose it within 3 to 5 days when you go back to sea level. So you have to time it really well. And actually it also affects some people slightly differently. So the idea is to increase the red blood cell count, hemoglobin levels, and just give you this real artificial boost, which is similar to taking, of course, EPO in the cycling world. So that is the two first things. Most of us don't really have those altitude chambers, tents, but the first one is quite commonly used. All right. So now I've still got you on your attention. You're wondering what the other threes are. Next one, wetsuits with the sleeve. I'll show you a few examples. The sleeve with the fast gliding materials to make your hand entry glide through the water faster. I've spoken to a few various wetsuit providers around this, had some inside info. It is generally marketing to try and differentiate them from, it's a cutthroat industry. They want to sell their high ticket item wetsuits at the top, $800 and above, $1,000. And to do that, they might have to put different materials, and one of them they can do to stand out is to put it in the sleeve. Yes, that is where your hand enters the water and bends at the elbow and catches the water, but there's no transference. That is just aesthetics, and it doesn't improve your performance. So to pay the extra for the top tier, you're probably wasting your money. The great idea is, certainly for beginners, is to not go past the middle of the range of a brand that fits you well. Don't get sucked into the hype. They sponsor a lot of the top athletes, first out of the water, to then sell wetsuits. I've been around for a long time, the big brands. I won't mention any particular brands on this. I have used for the last 6 to 7 years a particular brand from the UK and have been very happy with it. And they are smaller and not trying to take on the world, having been with a big brand before that. I don't get my wetsuits for free anymore, but it's served me well, and durability is key. So fit is the first and most important thing. Don't get sucked into the extra materials because they just have to try stand out from the rest. That's the clincher. Okay, number 4, aero tri-suits with the dimples that you see now. A couple of brands surpass a few of the others that the top 1 to 2% of the professionals at the top of their field are using for gains. So dimples create an aerodynamic effect with airflow. Now that's been tested in wind tunnels, and yes, you do get a few watts saving if it's located in the right place based on their shoulders. Because let's face it, anything with aerodynamics is all to do with pretty much your upper body hitting the wind first. Now, for those professionals seeking seconds over 180 Ks, 100%, they don't pay for their tri suits. When I was in Hawaii in 2022, they were launching the Blumenfeld suit and Gustav Eden, and it was, I think, pre-ordered around $1,000 or €1,000 or whatever. Now, that is just phenomenal. Yes, tri-suits do make you faster. We all agree on that. Longer sleeves, tighter fitting. For the everyday person moving around, lifting their head, they're better off having faster wheels, better aerodynamics from a fit through the front end, and a helmet, rather than spending 3-4 times the amount on a comfortable aero suit, because a lot of them aren't comfortable, to try and save a few watts from the dimples on their arm, but actually they keep sitting up off the bars, which negates the whole effect. So I think that's a big marketing hype that the professionals at the top of the field are using, that's filtering down to us, which will then sell expensive tri suits. So that's number 4. Number 5, we all know Morton as a brand. They are now part of Ironman alongside Precision Hydration as a hydration partner, which is a great move. They do some terrific carbohydrate products, awesome. They recently have launched sodium bicarb sodium, which is not a new type of product. It's been around in the performance circles, proven over and over to reduce lactic buffering or improve lactic buffering for short, very intense 30-second efforts up to 2 minutes. Now, an Ironman or a half Ironman or even Olympic distance is nowhere near that duration. So if you're very explosive, even over 5 seconds, up to 100 meters, it's fantastic and it's proven. And in training, it's great as well. But I see athletes now using this, it's a high level of sodium in it as well, using that in 3 specified doses before an event, like a key event, like an Ironman or half Ironman. If you're not time trialing on a bike, for example, a 10 miler, which is over in 20 minutes, I wouldn't probably waste the high level cost for something like that. I'd rather get you to really focus on your preloading of actually hydration before a big event. So you optimized in your blood plasma, really focus on training your gut to get some good carbohydrate tolerance, not high, not low, but somewhere that's good for your body weight before the event. So you're standing on the start line with topped up muscle, liver glycogen, and your blood glucose in the last 30 minutes. And that stands you in much better stead for trying to get these small performance gains of lactic acid buffering, which is actually designed for ultimately super short sprint, 15-second efforts, that 30-second efforts up to a minute, that we are not anaerobic athletes. So I think that needs to be taken in context and a pinch of salt. Not that the product is inferior. Don't get me wrong. I don't think any of these products are inferior. It's my opinion, but I think they're a bit of a money waster for the everyday triathlete, and that's pretty much everyone listening to this that might be interested in trying to improve their performance, curious, and actually no one really does really good, honest reviews about this. So there are some must-haves, so stick around. Please hit the subscribe and look at all the other videos that I've touched on. You might enjoy them. Like anything, context is key. What you should have, what's a nice to have, what are essentials. So we all know it can add up. The swimming, the wetsuits, the goggles, nice form goggles with your pace control. Bike is the biggest area of expense. I covered this in a previous video of the 3 must-have bits of kit for bike, swim and run. I won't go repeat myself. Having done that a few months ago and now just done a review on the money wasters, I'll mention a couple of things that are crucial for your development on your pathway, potentially not as a beginner, but once you've done a few events. So just to start back to the vitamin mineral body support, if I've said athletics greens is a money waster, what you probably ideally want to do is, if you're concerned that you potentially need some support with your immune system, with the training load, and your diet's maybe not optimal, what is optimal really, Is it supporting your training? I would probably just get a relatively affordable blood panel. Do it once and then maybe 6 months later, so you can kind of see where you are low in areas as a base level. Then I would probably look at a brand, and I know of one in the UK that, for example, that are science-backed but not off the charts expensive. They're a non-profit, they're a charity. So I've been using Cyto Plan for years, for the last couple of years, should I say. The bioavailability is really good and it's not super expensive, no fancy marketing of labels and packaging. But then I tweak that based on kind of my demands of training, where I'm at in my life, my age. It certainly has increased my magnesium intake. There's a lot of great research recently around magnesium requirements for athletes. Pillar Performance doing a great job there. So those are the areas we want to take high amounts of. You see where we play around. So, and then omega-3s, huge anti-inflammatory, brain health, gut health. So you're not going to get that amount from the previous product. So yes, you will have to take 5 or 6, but it is the way to go, I feel, as a coach, because you know how much you're getting. And also you can cut back certain times that you might not want so much high vitamin D. It can become toxic if you go over the recommended 10,000 IU in a day. There's sunlight, but you need exposure with your limbs and so forth to get that vitamin D. And then there's the gene, the vitamin D transporter, that we don't even know if that's a problem unless you've done a DNA gut microbiome testing. So you might need more vitamin D. So I would venture down that road. Reach out if you need a bit of help with that. Certainly with the world of the web, we can do things virtually. I have my consultants that do work with my athletes that help further this process, because I can't know everything, but it's somewhere I take a lot of interest in and read up a lot about. Okay, so we want to break down the cost of that. It'll probably be about a third of what you were spending. At least you're getting really good quality, and then just some fresh kefir in the fridge. You can also, prebiotics would be like things like sauerkraut, kimchi in the fridge to add to salads. Again, all small amounts in moderation, because if you have too much at once, it can create quite a bit of an upset environment for your gut to have it in one go, and you could get like flatulence and you might go, that product's not good. It's just the vast amount you had. Same with things like beans and so forth. We've all been there. So that's the AG1. Back to the hypoxic tent. Okay, you mentioned about sleep and so forth. So one of the key must-haves, I think, now with all the research that's continuously coming out, is really paying attention to your HRV. Not new. Dr. Plews did his PhD over 10 years ago on that. I've done a lot of his learnings around HRV, and it's mainly to track how your months are going and the flows of your recovery and the training adaptations. You can see in my hand, or a ring. I'm not affiliated to either. I used Whoop for years, and then I stopped the subscription, and I've just got a ring which lasts longer. Ultimately, you want the high accuracy, and my athletes that I work closely with for long-term longevity and health span, we use HRV to pick up some trends and see if, and that aligned with resting heart rate. So I'd rather you spend money on that and really nail the key, because training is all about recovery, the adaptation. So if you're not getting that, you're not actually the training. You can do all the training you want, but you're never going to actually leap forward and progress. And that's something that took me years to kind of figure out, I won't lie, because, again, we didn't have a lot of exposure to this, and all these things do cost extra money, but that's money worth spent. You need to take it in context. I'd really just watch the readiness scores. There's been an independent study on that, being that actually that's the green and the orange and the red. I would remove that. I would rather just look at trends in your HRV and look actually how much time you were asleep versus in bed, and that relative percentage, you want to try and get 85 to 90% of sleep versus when you're actually in bed, and the quality is more important than the volume and the quantity. I did do a sleep video around some books that you could read. Dig back into my archives there a few months ago. So then we move on to the actual swim, bike and run. I mentioned, yes, you're going to spend 10 grand on a bike. The running is slightly more affordable, but now with all these new carbon shoes that come out, they aren't cheap, $200 plus pounds for a decent pair of carbons, and they don't last you very long. What we do know though is there's some key areas that you will get a performance gain. So I'll finish with the run last. So if we start with the swim, if you're a beginner swimmer, you don't necessarily need to go all in and get the form goggles, which gives you pace and times and splits. You just want to actually get your feel for the water. And you probably just want to have a pool buoy and more or less probably a snorkel. The next layer up is to have one of those Finis tempo trainers I mentioned in the previous video. That's a key must-have. That's the alternative to having goggles that bring your pace and splits. The only thing with those goggles is they might not fit your face very well. So for example, I always just use a standard Speedo goggle or a tri-fit goggle, that the Rapid X one. They're the ones that fit my face really well. And then I use a tempo trainer to help me with pace splits, and especially to hold back for the slow stuff and push the harder. It's like having a power meter on the bike. So that's probably the swim must-haves, relatively inexpensive, and the performance gains are compounded for years and years, and you'll always use that. Of course, there's other toys to have, and I've done some other videos on that. Biking, you could argue it. I think the key thing is to spend money on a bike fit, be one with a bike. Most bikes now have power, so I've not been living under a rock for the last few years. Power on your pedals, power on your cranks. Beginner athletes, probably you don't have to worry about all those bells and whistles. Just getting out and riding your bike with a heart rate monitor is a definitely must-have. These days you can have, as well as a strap that goes around your chest. They're quite uncomfortable for most, especially females. You'd probably want to get the one that goes around your bicep. That's it. That is a must-have. Then you move on to the next levels, and I would spend the money that you've saved on gadgets and unnecessary things, and I'd get some lab testing, some physiology lab testing at least twice a year. That's probably your best money saving. And then the performance gains from that, you can work with a coach around the zones and the areas of weakness, the holes in your physiology, or you can try and figure that out on your own, which is quite complex. But that's the best way to then the must-haves for the next steps. Okay, so you can see there's a couple of hierarchies here. With the run evolving, it's the same thing with heart rate. And then of course everyone goes off pace, But if we think about some things that aren't necessarily looked at, certainly from a coaching perspective, a watch that gives you cadence. Cadence is very important. So how fast your legs hit the ground, so RPM. Garmin will give you like 180, for example, and you obviously halve that, it's 90 per leg. There's no magic exact number, but if someone's running at 80 steps per minute per leg, we definitely want to try and prove that at least 4 to 6 above 85. If they're doing their fast stuff and they're 90, 92, they are in that efficient, really high economical. We want to pick people's cadence up. The other thing that's quite essential in the running must-haves for most triathletes, and I say that especially most, it's proven now to improve economy and run splits with tired legs. You know what's coming, carbon shoes. The only issue I have with that from a biomechanical standpoint, and not a brand issue, is they're getting on the wrong people's feet, and biomechanically the efficiency, they can't handle the softness of the shoe. So if you're running behind someone, you'll see them completely collapsing. 75, 80, 85 kilograms going through a foot each step, 90 steps per leg per minute. There's something like 7 times the force of your body weight through the shoe. They make you run quicker, 100%. They've got a rocker involved. Should beginners have them? I think if you haven't had a decent video analysis, it can be quite simple and you're fairly neutral, crack on. If you are starting out running and just running 5Ks and maybe building up to 10, I'd rather just have a decent training shoe than rather go and spend the money on a carbon shoe. As you evolve and get more efficient and you've spent 6 months, a year, even 18 months doing a few triathlons or running events, then that's potentially the next thing. So context is key for which side of the performance coin you want to really go for. There's always comfort, then there's injury prevention. But those are the areas that I think are money wasters. Those are the things that you must have if you want to take it fairly seriously. And there you go. If you want to crush your next triathlon, please get in touch. The link's in the description. Or even if you want to try and qualify for Kona, let's get stuck in, and I'll see you at the next race, or come and say hi. Thanks very much for listening.